Philosophers talk to our times, towards an ethnography of a self-poisoning mind. Way back when, 1984? When Uses of Pleasure was published, 82 actually. Foucault argued very convincingly that the entire Western conception of identity was tied to a historical act made in ancient Greece, where ancient Greece learned to fold desire. It wasn't enough to desire if you were a free man in ancient Athens. You had to desire the right desires. It turned having an identity into a game, a complex game of meaning, where you had a goal, someone you wished to be, a mind you wanted to cultivate yourself towards, and your aim was to always grow the desires that would lead you there, and by ancient Rome's time suppress all those that would lead you astray. Virtue was not something you woke up overnight and yawned and said, well, from now on, I've seen the light. I shall be virtuous. You might do that, but that would go nowhere. To be virtuous was to be engaged in a constant act of gardening. You gardened your desires. You cultivated yourself as the great desiring engine, the great cog in which you didn't just desire, but you desired your own desires. You understood them. You comprehended them. You mastered them. And the great philosophies of Rome, the Stoics and the Epicureans, were then just systematization of such desire and all the complexities that it opened out onto. All the ways you had to manage who and what you were in the complex world of free citizens of Rome. And what has this got to do with us? Well, Foucault is, of course, reminding you that the conception of your identity is not independent from the management of desire. You become what you are through folding your desires upon each other, through working out how they all coalesce, through reconciling yourself to some, through raging against others if you must. You are then a panoply of desire and a toolkit for coping with them. Well, what's this got to do with us? Have you not seen the connection? Because isn't it obvious? The minute we handed desire over to capitalism, of course it changed. I mean, Foucault never lived to write that book, but one of the things that Marx was doing in Das Kapital is talking about how production turns human desire into a Greek god, and so that you can have unlimited desires for shoes, or unlimited desire for food, or for power. So that desire transfigures its identity. It becomes even more important to master, which is of course why Marx, a good little Stoic philosopher, his early work, I think he was after all on the classics, wanted to understand communism as the ultimate Stoic form of what desire would look like in the post-industrial age. Because desire is shifted, changed, made altogether more powerful and dangerous by the industrial process. Human desire then transforms into a god. And that godhead is only masterable on the level of society, on the level of communism. But until you've reached that, Marx would say, our desires are like little raging bulls. It is no longer easy to control them. We're no longer simply the master. More than that, as all the commentators after Marx would say. Because capitalism has a motivation for gradually unpicking our desires from any attempt to control, because desires mean we buy things, and buy things means profit. And so that from the mid-19th century onwards, but no, from the 18th century, from the invention of drapery, desire became carefully cultivated by companies and corporations. Desire became, to a degree, corporate. And there became a yo-yo between the ancient model, where who and what you were folded into desire, and this new model, where some of that desire, some of that being you, became increasingly caught up within companies who wanted to define your desires, who wanted to define how you thought your identity, where you thought it, and why you thought it. But at that point still, you were still master of your own desire, in that it was up to you to coordinate them within yourself. You were still the responsible citizen, managing desires that others were trying to usurp, but that you had to coordinate still. And in such a process of the gradual of the initial corporatization of desire, AI creates a new level. Because what does AI do? What does a phone do? AI is merely a name for something the phone already was, and something it's wanting us to give ourselves to. That is, it becomes the main manager of our desires. Ever wondered why you're anxious when you've lost your phone, as if you've lost your soul? The Foucauldian model for desire, linking it to the self, would see the phone very much as the soul, the modern prison for the body, the modern way, the junction house of desire. For it has usurped how we manage our desires. Not only is it the focus of desire, the locus, the junction box. That's been the case for 20 years or so. Ever since Apple ran together, work and play on a single device, so that we can kid ourselves we're working when really we're watching whatever we want to watch. And it became a single unit that did everything. That was therefore the endless midwife of desire. So to desire everything or anything, the first thing you always said, well, I must just have my phone. It became then first the embodiment of what it was to desire at all. And then quietly, of course, the software was created. Capitalism had discovered something, that the internet would only make money for folk, because we weren't prepared to pay for it, if it turned those folk into the product. And that is, of course, what things like Facebook are invariably doing. They are making you understand yourself as the product. They are usurping, then, that Foucauldian Stoic definition of the self as that which manages your desire, that which desires your desires. That which now desires your desires is hidden in your pocket, watching you all the time, suggesting new desires to you, hoping to develop new things to sell to you, telling you new ways you are or could be, carefully cultivating what it thinks you wish to desire. It has very much taken over then the old role of the desire of ancient philosophy. And why? Oh, it's terribly easy to sell things to people if you control their desires. It is no longer a case of companies having to kind of share in your identity. It's far more lucrative to become it. And for me, I think that's the point of the I bit of artificial intelligence. It's not intelligent as such. Oh, it might use neural nets that are modeled on the human brain. But what makes it intelligent is us, in the way that it merges with our intelligence. It takes it over, uses it, changes what it is and what it can become. It's always a useful moment, I find. To look at if you look at something like your Facebook feed, not the stuff you want, not your friends, but what it is suggesting. And even more these days, all the silent AI shorts. The AI shorts that it's probably mixing for you with the people who do not exist. I get endless lessons in French by people who I suspect are not real. Some of the lessons are perfectly reasonable, but all that means is that Facebook has looked at everything I am and go, let us manufacture French content for you. And all the rest. You only have to look then at those shorts to see how the AI is trying to manage your desires. It is the thing that desires your desires for you. That's of course why the identity has become so much more complicated. So that men start to identify with lesbians, so that sexuality slips beyond control, because we are no longer controlling it. As desires that one day would have been thought as just normal part of sexuality's remit becomes named identities in their own right. You become able, whatever body you are, to identify with whatever sexuality you want to be. Why? Oh, because Facebook tells you you can. Because Facebook will carefully curate your identity, because it is in control. It is in control of the desire, and there's money to be made. Always money to be made, drugs to be sold, clothes to be sold, films to be made, or just an endless little peep show sparkled with ads. Your desire and your inability to control it, or rather, the fact that you have given it over to AI, becomes a terribly lucrative business. More than that, you must of course remember, Athens. What's the one thing you know about classical Athens? That it invented democracy? The point is that the invention, the original equation of that is not just enough to desire, you must desire your own desires, was the formula for free men. It was the formula that defined Athenian democracy, that allowed you to be free from your own base carnal desire, that allowed you to be in control of who and what you are and who and what you could be, to be a genuine citizen, and not just of Athens, but of freedom itself. You see where this is going, don't you? So that for 2,000 and more years, 2,500 years, the entire notion of freedom has been tied up to desiring the desires that you desire. And now, to lose that freedom, to lose that demand, that it isn't good enough to feel your identity, you must also cultivate it, understand it within the context of a body and a life, a world in which you actually live, a time frame, all the rest. All those things the Stoic philosophers would be forever reminding you. To lose control of that is to lose control of your freedom, to lose control of the possibility of your freedom. Is it any wonder then governments are in such a mess? Because the very possibility, the very type of citizens that they once ruled has been snuffed out by that little traitor in your pocket that silently manages what you desire at all.